Some recent news about the Baltimore's offseason plan has just leaked, and Mike Elias is a big part of it, leaving many fans upset. Welcome to Orioles Digest. I'm your host, Kam Brice. And before you do anything, hit that subscribe button. If you're a part of this percentage, let's change that today. Come join the channel. I give you daily updates about the Baltimore Orioles that you do not want to miss. Now, some recent news about the Baltimore Orioles has just come out. Some recent news about the Baltimore Orioles has just released, and one MLB insider gave us some great intel. In an article, Jeff Passan had something interesting to say. Baltimore does not want to forfeit a draft pick by signing a starter with a qualifying offer, Manaea and Pivetta. Now, we have all known this all off season. There have been talks in the media. There have been multiple articles about Mike Elias not willing to give up draft capital. But I thought those days were behind us because at the winter meetings, Mike Elias had a kind of different approach. In an interview with MLB.com, Jake Rill, Elias said, "We're in on everyone. We're talking to everyone. When there's aspects of rules that create wrinkles, you got to weigh them." And when I'm reading this quote, I'm thinking, he's going to go out and try to get anyone that he can. And then in the last part of the quote, it says, if we feel like we had the talent on the current roster, then that's what we have. So Mike Elias is basically saying Baltimore's have their talent. They're comfortable with their talent right now. But if they can go out and trade for another starter and bolster this roster, that's something that they would do. Now, my only question is, when is Mike Elias going to give up on the draft capital? Because at some point, you're going to need to spend the big bucks. I've been saying this in multiple videos. You have to spend to be competitive in the MLB. And Elias is kind of in this tricky situation right now where he wants to go spend the money, but he doesn't want to give up on the draft picks. And I completely understand that. You have so many talented players that you got from the MLB draft that are becoming MLB All-Stars. So why stop now? Young talent in the MLB is rare to come by, but a young team doesn't stay young forever. The Houston Astros, New York Yankees with the baby Bombers, with Aaron Judge and all those guys. We saw those guys move on, and it was because they had to grow up. They had to move different pieces in order to make key pivotal moves in their career, in their franchise, and making a World Series. The Dodgers had a lot of young talent with Cody Bellinger and all those different types of guys. But eventually, they went out. They had to get Mookie. And then they brought a championship to Los Angeles. And at the someday, Mike Elias is going to have to sit down with his team. It's like, okay, it's time to move all of these prospects. Let's extend Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman, and the rest of them, let's find a new home for them. That's going to get me into my next point. Now, which players will the Baltimore Orioles target, knowing the qualifying offer will be attached? Now, one player that I know a lot of people are hesitant to sign is Jack Flaherty. And if you look at my past videos, I've talked about Flaherty's struggles with the Baltimore Orioles. And I've been so hesitant on them acquiring Jack Flaherty. But when you look at it, Flaherty can be a guy that won't be at the top of your rotation. He won't be your 1, your 2, or your 3. He'll be like your 4 or 5. And at the end of the day, that's a guy that you need. He won't be consistent every start, but he's going to show some flashes here and there. 7 innings, 2 hits, 11 strikeouts. He might even have some games when he goes 8 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, with 11 strikeouts again. And that's what you need in a certain type of guy. If you can get a guy like Jack Flaherty, it won't hurt your team, but the only problem is paying him. He's going to want a reasonable contract. And for the Baltimore Orioles, I would not offer him a contract well over 2 years. You have to find a different option. Another guy that doesn't have a qualifying offer attached is Walker Buehler. Would be a perfect guy. Yes, last year he dealt with injuries. He was very inconsistent at times. But if you watched the previous video before this, I talked a whole lot about Walker Buehler. How his progression throughout the season helped the Dodgers win the World Series, how he was their best starter in the playoffs, and he finally came through for that team when they needed him the most. This is the guy the Baltimore Orioles can afford. I actually think the Orioles have the best chance of Buehler It just fits the right system. Everything will work out, and he's affordable. He's a guy that you can get for less than 20 million for 1 year. If you're asking me, the pitching market now, 1 year, it's probably well over 20 million. You see a lot of starting pitchers getting the average 30, between 45 million a year. That is a lot. And for a guy like Corbin Burns, he's going to break the market. He's probably going to get around 35 to 40 million a year. If the Baltimore Orioles, San Francisco Giants, or even the Toronto Blue Jays offer him that much, that is what he will get. He deserves it. Now back to Walker Buehler. That's another guy that can fit the rotation. You have Grayson Rodriguez, you have Sagano, you have Zach Eflin, Kyle Bradish will be back, and we have to remember Kyle Bradish because the Baltimore Orioles, if you don't wanna go out and get Corbin Burns, I completely understand that. Okay, say you sign Walker Buehler, say he pitches all the way up into mid-July, gets hurt. Fine. Kyle Bradish will be able to pick him up. You get Bueller back for the playoffs. You have 5 starters that can go out there and dominate. You have a lot of people on your team that you can trust in now. If you get Corbin Burns right now and you give him 300 million, that's going to kind of limit you down the long road. You're not going to be able to sign Gunnar Henderson to a big extension, even though I believe Scott Boras is going to try to let Gunnar hit the open market because his value is going to be around 800 million. And the Orioles better not do that. That's a terrible decision if they let Gunnar Henderson hit the open market. And then also Adley Rutschman, who will be asking for extension soon. It's a lot of players in this free agent market. It's a lot of players you can go out and get. I just think the Baltimore Orioles are kind of in that tough spot right now, of trying to find who they want to go out and get. Who do they want to really acquire? And that's going to bring me into my last point of the day. What's next for the Baltimore Orioles, and what can we expect from this team and Mike Elias? Now, what do I expect? I expect them to make a big time offer to Corbin Burns. Now, like Jeff Passan said before, and I've said this in other videos. If you take a look back 2 videos before this, I gave out a recent article, sneak peek about Corbin Burns and Alex Bregman's timetable and where they will sign a contract. And Passan said it's going to be at the end of Christmas. Burns is back in Arizona spending time with his family right now. So we should expect a decision probably the end of December going into like January, the middle of January. So that's when I expect Corbin Burns to make a decision. What we do not know is have the Baltimore Orioles offered Burns a contract? We know that the Blue Jays offered him one, and we know that the Giants offered him one. We don't know the details, the years, or the money value, but we do know agents have been in talks with them. And then there are other teams like Seattle Mariners, New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox who are kind of hitting. Well, after the Yankees signed Fried, you can just throw them off the timetable. They're not getting Burns. The Red Sox actually are a sneaky team. So the Baltimore's have a lot of teams in a bidding war right now. It's just going to depend on what can David Rubenstein and Mike Elias offer. I've been looking at a contract probably around 4 years, up to 210 million for the Baltimore Orioles. Do you really put yourself in that position? Or do you go out, get a guy like Jack Flaherty, get a guy like Nick Pivetta, and the only question about getting a guy like Sean Manaea and Nick Pivetta is the qualifier offer is attached. And I just believe at some point, Mike Elias, you're going to lose a first round draft pick. You're going to go in the draft and you're not going to draft the stud. So in this position now, why not just take a swing at Sean Manaea? He's been a consistent pitcher last season, had the best year of his career, helped the Mets get to the playoffs. And he's a guy that could be a culture shock and culture change to this team, a veteran presence, a guy who's gritty, goes out about his business. The opposite of Jack Flaherty, actually. And we saw Jack Flaherty sometimes let his emotions get to the best of him, and it affects his game. It's going to be an interesting offseason for Mike Elias. Every single day, new news comes out about the Baltimore Orioles. This was a little bit shocking to me because at the winter meetings, Mike Elias talked about how they'll go out and get anyone. And now the reports are starting to come in that Elias is backpedaling on that. and not willing to go out and get guys with a qualifying offer. And that's going to be a bad situation for the Baltimore Orioles going into next season. That's all we have for today, folks. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and come join the channel.